episode of Extra Time. Thanks for joining us here on this all-star break as we get ready for the second half of the baseball season. I'm Adam Pellerin, Jemai Webster, Sophia Jurkstovich. They are enjoying their time off, so we have a very special guest joining us for this edition. Hailey Hunter, who is my co-worker, I guess you could say, right? Sportsnet Pittsburgh, covers the Penguins and the Pirates. Hailey, thanks for jumping on with us. Appreciate it.
Adam, thank you. So great to get to know you more as my coworker and talk a little bit more about what we've been doing over the past year with our teams.
Yeah, so we got a chance to meet finally in April, I believe it was. It was the Penguins-Bruins game in Pittsburgh. It was a national TV game, so I didn't have a ton of obligations. You, however, were hosting the pre- and post-game, I believe, and you got a chance to talk to Andy Brickley. And we're going to get into your sort of background, but it was pretty cool that you got a chance to talk to Brick because there's a connection there, right?
Yeah. So my dad had a stint with the Penguins for a couple of years. And then, of course, he dropped down and played a few years in the IHL, a handful of years there. And during that time in the IHL, he actually played with Brick. And so that was pretty funny. And I told my dad I was going to meet him that day, and he told him to say hey, and definitely had some fun stories. So that's what's been fun about working for the Penguins is it's been so long since my dad played, but when you meet some of these former players and these analysts, a lot of them do know my dad. So it's kind of fun to hear stories from their perspective.
Yeah, it's so cool, right? The opportunity to cover the team that your dad played for. I mean, I can't imagine. But in terms of, your story, right? So this is the first time you're appearing on Extra Time. People, familiar with your work, I'm sure, if they're hockey fans, if they're baseball fans. But because this is sort of a NESN audience, I would say for the most part, even though it's podcast, I want to get to know you a little bit better. And it'll benefit me too, right? Because we had a sort of a quick interaction in Pittsburgh. We were kind of like, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. I also want to, take the time to say, yeah. And, and take the time to say like Dan Potash, I haven't got a chance to meet him in person either. He actually emailed me a couple of times. Great guy. Yeah, he seems like a really nice guy. So I want to get to know you a little bit better. So, I don't want to start from, when you were a baby, but like, just talk about like, where you grew up and how you got into the business.
Yeah, for sure. We could start from when I'm a baby, really, because I grew up around hockey my whole life. And, I was in skates at the age of 2 because of my dad. And so I always joke with people the rink was a little bit more of my home than my actual home. I think sometimes I thought my house was the rink because we were there so much. But no, just always loved hockey because my dad, I have a twin brother and he played, AAA growing up, was always on skates, playing competitively since he was about 4. My dad coached the team. So I've always loved hockey. And I always, going into this career, it was because I loved hockey and wanted to be a hockey reporter. And so I've kind of obviously taken a long journey to get back in the hockey space, but so glad to finally be back in the hockey space. And it just feels like home to me. As I said, I grew up around the game my whole life.
Yeah. So you grew up around the game of hockey, but you became a golfer and you played at Ohio University, and then you tried a pro career too, which is crazy. By the way, I got to get like some tips at some point. You got to please take me out on the course. Please help me. I need all the help I can get. But talk about your golf career in college and then the transition to the pros for a little while.
Well, first of all, what's your handicap these days? Because I'm sure you don't get much time to golf.
I don't even have a handicap. If Hailey, if I break triple digits, it is like I'm popping bottles, man. I'm popping bottles. I'm very happy. So I need a lot of. I got a baseball swing. Like I played baseball in college. And if slicing was like, if you could earn points or strokes for that, I'd be a good golfer, but you don't. So I struggle. But in terms of your career, how'd you get into golf and just talk about that journey?
Well, first of all, just so you know, only 10% of golfers break 100. So if you ever break 100, just know that you are one of just 10%. It's rare. A lot of people aren't that great at golf or they always lie about their scorecard or what have you. But no, I got into it through my dad and my brother both loved golf growing up. It's funny because when I was younger, my mom would, be doing house chores, laundry. And when I was about 4 or 5 years old, they would invite me to go with them to the golf course. But I just wanted to stay home with mom because the sport seemed boring to me at the time, which is so funny because I obviously love golf and grew to play it competitively. But by the age of about 9, I started playing more often. There was a junior golf league that I did, and I loved it. And just played very competitively, traveled around throughout the summers with my twin brother, which was nice because it was the same tournament. So it was kind of like a family affair where my dad would take us both and we'd both compete in our divisions. But yeah, then I signed with Ohio. I went to Ohio because of journalism. They had a really good school. I hadn't even heard of OU actually. I was just sitting in the office with my dad on the computer typing in top 10 journalism schools. And even though I'm from Michigan, the state next door, I was always, Michigan State, one of those schools. But OU came up and it ended up being one of the best times of my life. I absolutely loved it in Athens, Ohio. They let you get really hands-on and do stuff as just a freshman there. So got a lot of experience in journalism. And it's funny because I actually, I never wanted to turn pro. I always had journalism in my mind. And I went and did a internship in Tampa, Florida with at Amalie Arena for the Lightning. And they had an arena football team at the time, the Tampa Bay Storm. Probably haven't heard of it, but it was a big deal there at the time. And so, whatever it took, they let me do some stuff on camera, and it was a great internship. So I'm thinking this is the first summer where I've really never played competitively and practiced every day. I was so busy with that internship. And so that I came back and it's funny how golf works sometimes. And you know this, I just played lights out in my senior season. And so I'm thinking, okay, like maybe I should turn pro because I was playing so well. And so I did. But then when I went to qualifying school, I saw all these other girls there, a lot of them from overseas, a lot of them from other countries such as Asia, and they're like 14, 15 years old and they're kicking my butt. So I'm like, all right, this is probably going to be a 3 to 4 year process and costs a lot of money to make it to the LPGA. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm out here literally writing blog stories about the girls the whole time that I'm competing against. So I think I'm in the wrong career. I think I need to go back into journalism. So the rest is history. I realized that's kind of my true passion.
As you were telling that story, I go back to, by the way, that's my dog, Mabel. She wants to desperately co-host, if you can hear the barking right now. My 9-year-old daughter's trying to keep her in check, and, she'll eventually stop. I'm on the 3rd floor. She's on the 1st floor. She's got a loud bark. Anyway. So, when you were talking about that, I was thinking back to my sort of journey in college, right? And so, I played college baseball for a smaller school here in Boston, and I had aspirations of playing professionally. And, and I was just thinking too about being a student athlete and juggling, your academia and your athletics and trying to balance between the two. It's really challenging. And at the same time, trying to figure out what you're going to do for your career as well after college, because it's going to come up, pretty soon. But, I had aspirations of playing professional baseball. I got invites to a couple of tryouts, some showcases and things like that. I was undrafted. And I got to that point too, where I sort of looked around. I was 24 years old. And I sort of looked around and I said, you know what? I've given it all I can. I'm not going to live out of my car going from tryout to tryout. I have to make a decision. And I was sort of at a crossroads. Did you sort of come to that crossroads too, where you were just like, you know what? I got to choose a path?
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Living out of your car, that's probably what it would have been like. I mean, I didn't realize just how much everything cost. When you're a college athlete, everything's kind of done for you. And then you graduate and you're trying to go pro and you're kind of on your own, right? And so that's definitely where I found myself. I mean, I was starting to put a budget together with my coach and she was trying to help me. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, 80 at the time, 80, probably 100 now, $100,000 a year just to pay for the tournaments and the travel and everything. And I'm sure for you, the showcases. And it gets a little overwhelming when you're not really playing for the love of it. You feel like you're almost, it becomes about money and being able to afford it. And so that was the biggest thing for me. It's just like, this is definitely a lot different. And not only that, but when you're traveling in golf, you're staying in hotels by yourself, you're competing by yourself. The team aspect you had, which you would still have in baseball, but the team aspect I had in high school and college, I was just on my own. So it really changed the way that I looked at the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And I think I looked at it too, as sort of like, what am I going to do? Like, I
Right.
mean, sports are such a big part of your life if you play them when you're younger, and you sort of ride, and you're so used to the routine, you're so used to being around it, and then
Yeah.
when there's a threat of it ending, you're like, where am I going to go from here? This has been a part of
How
my
do I do it?
identity my entire life, and so that was really difficult to make that transition. But in terms of
Yeah.
your sort of transition, when you sort of chose your path, where did it take you in terms of to where you are now? What was your first sort of step in getting to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. First of all, when you went to college, did you know you wanted to be a sports broadcaster? Because you mentioned kind of being like not knowing.
Yeah,
You were
I didn't. No, I didn't. So
okay.
I actually, I grew up in a house with two parents who worked in TV. And so my
Yeah.
dad was a director and a producer, but worked for advertising agencies, producing and directing commercials. So when I was a kid, I was actually in a couple of commercials, and so
Oh my God.
I got my first
We
taste in
gotta see
front of the
these.
camera. Yeah, right. I know if we could dig it up, right? I was in a pet store commercial, and I was in there was like a kids club or whatever, and I was part of the crowd, and so that was my first taste of being in front of the camera. And then my mom worked behind the scenes for many years at the Fox station here in Boston for 3+ decades, which I would later join her and work with her. And she didn't work on the news side of things, but she worked on like sort of the behind the scenes commercial side of things. And
Yeah.
so anyway, I grew up with it, but when I got to college, I wasn't sure. I wanted to get into I was thinking maybe advertising, because my dad
Yeah.
worked in advertising, and I was thinking, oh, that'd be good working with maybe doing commercials, marketing, that kind of thing. But then, it sort of transitioned when I was in school. To I got an opportunity to do some internships at my mom's station at 25. Got a taste of the news department, and I was thinking, oh, this is a pretty cool environment. As you know, it's fast paced. There's people running all over the place, and it kind of like you can almost equate it to sports, right? Where it's just like you're hustling to get somewhere. You got to work together as a team, and that sort of appealed to me, that aspect of it. And so I started working behind the scenes in the newsroom, and eventually it was like, what, like let's see what a audition tape looks like. And so I went out with a reporter and some stories, and put together a tape, and ended up getting my first on-air job. But yeah,
Right.
I didn't know in college. It was so I don't know what I'm
Right.
gonna do.
Yeah. And I mean, you hear how hard it is to break into this industry too, and hard to get that first job, even if you do have a couple internships under your belt. So that's kind of where I was at too. Like, I think maybe that's part of the reason why I was like, oh, I'm just going to turn pro in golf. Like this is what I'm used to, playing golf every day, and going into the workforce world's kind of intimidating when you're still a college athlete. But no, for me, I so everyone kind of said local news is the best route, and that's where you get all your reps. But of course, some other people will tell you, but if you can skip that step and go work for like a big network or the LPGA Tour, the PGA Tour, then that would be great. And so I got an opportunity to intern for the LPGA Tour, which was great, which turned into a full-time role. And I was doing more like video editing and behind the scenes producing stuff. But after 3 years there, I finally kind of smartened up and came to the realization, which while it was great and I met a lot of good contacts, I wasn't getting the on-cam reps that I really needed. And I might have thought that I was okay on camera at that time, but I'll show you some of my old stand-ups. Not the best. So went to local news, and then that's where like I really figured out how to talk on air and learn my voice and get used to being an on-air personality. And so that was in Jackson, Mississippi, 2 years there. At the time, my friends were like, "Are you crazy?" I had this big friend group in Florida, and we were really close. And I moved into Mississippi. It was so random at the time. I'm from Michigan, lived in Florida. You don't know a lot of people usually from Mississippi, but I moved there and ended up loving it. People are so nice. I'm actually here right now in Mississippi visiting my boyfriend, and people are so nice here. Spent 2 years here covering every sport you could think of. And it was just such a huge growing opportunity for me.
Yeah, again, like I can relate, and a lot of people in the business can certainly relate, right? And so, the prospect of moving and living somewhere else that you've never been to before, doing something that you've never done before full time is really daunting, right? You don't know anybody, you don't know the lay of the land, you sort of feel like an outsider. And my first on-air job, so I had a similar route where I worked behind the scenes for 2 years. While I was trying to, catch on baseball wise, I was also working at Fox 25 as an assignment editor and a
Okay.
news writer, basically writing scripts for anchors. And got to the point where I said, you know what, like I don't think I want to do this. I do like the newsroom. I'm really intrigued by being a sports anchor, reporter, news reporter even. And so I ended up, like I mentioned,
Yeah.
putting together a tape, lucking out, getting a job in Portland, Maine. The weekend sports anchor there had like stormed out. And there was this sort of like
I know.
immediate need for some sort of drama was going
I was
on, but
thinking,
it
wow,
ended up.
this is my job, and the guy before me stormed out. Hopefully, this works out for
Yeah,
me.
exactly. And so the timing, the timing is everything in this business at time,
Yeah.
so, right? Like, so I ended up getting that job working up there for 3 years. But even though like Portland, Maine is only like 2 hours from Boston, Maine is people from New England know it's a totally different world, right? So Maine and Massachusetts and Boston area, totally different from, each other. And so ended up moving to Portland, worked with a great sports director, David, who was a great mentor for me. Got to know, how to cover like local sports, right? Covering local high schools, smaller colleges. But what was cool is I also got to, cover the Boston teams. So I had some
Yeah.
familiarity there. But, I went up and made friends that I still keep in touch with today. I go up and visit Portland because it's such a beautiful city. And, it was, you mentioned too earlier about, being not ready for, prime time, essentially being in front of the camera, needed work, right? Looking at your older, and everybody's in that same boat, right? It's like if I look at my stuff, I'll cringe. But
Exactly.
I at the time I was like, man, I can get my first on-air job in Boston. I'm already working at the station here in Boston, like. But I had, the anchor at the time said, look, I know you want to be on here in Boston, but you got to go, you got to travel, you got to make mistakes somewhere else, and in the long run it'll end up benefiting you. And it really did. It was great advice. And so 3 years there, and ended up coming back to Boston. And, even those 3 years were huge for me. I got to edit, shoot, write, and host, so it was
That was
really
what I
beneficial.
was wondering if you were the one man band. Were you doing it all over there in Portland?
Yeah. So I didn't shoot as much. A couple of times I picked up a camera, but for the most part, I didn't have to shoot, which was good. But I did edit, and I did get that experience, and it was good to sort of have control of your sportscast, and the ability to sort of say, all right, this is exactly how I want the highlight. This is exactly how I want the sound to go. This is exactly how I want to write to it. So I did like having that control, but it helps you with time management. It's huge, and also helps you understand the other aspects of the newsroom too, right? It's like, I understood now, what the editors go through, as somebody who's an assignment editor or a news writer, I understand those perspectives as well. So it all helps.
When I moved to Jackson, and I did all those things too, and you're so right, because it's almost like when you don't have to do it anymore. When I started with Sportsnet Pittsburgh, I found myself wanting to chop up and edit things how I wanted to. And my ENG shooters, they're so funny. They're like, Hailey, we can do it. Just log it out. But I'm so used to doing it myself. But when I was in Jackson, literally a few weeks, 3 weeks after I moved there to finally cover sports, COVID hit. And
Oh,
so I'm going there like, all excited, this young professional finally trying to get on cam reps, and they canceled all I cover the SEC here. They canceled the SEC tournament for all the sports. Then they canceled March Madness, and it was just one thing after the other. And so I'm like, wow, I just moved my life here. Am I even gonna be able to do what I wanted to do, which was cover sports? Are they gonna fire me? Like there's no sports anymore. And so I went to Barnes and Noble like every day during COVID. I guess they were one of the only ones that were open. And I just started researching on Twitter, Instagram, everything, trying to learn all these local athletes and just DMing and messaging all these athletes to try and come up with a sports story, one sports story, for the 5 days of week that 5 days of the week that I worked, to be able to have something to do and prove that I could still, like, that you guys don't have to fire me. I could still do features and things. And so that was a good the first 6 months of my time first covering sports was having to dig so hard and find all these stories before sports came back. So
Wow.
yeah, that was a huge experience for me, and to be able to just like learn those skills, to have to dig for my own stories.
Wow. Yeah, no, absolutely. Ends up benefiting you in the long run, right? And it's something that at the time you're like, oh man, this, how am I going to get through this? But you look back on it, and it's part of the foundational building blocks, right? But in terms of the next job after Jackson, where did you land? And we're getting closer to Sportsnet Pittsburgh, I think, at this point in your career, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, I loved hockey, and that was always my dream job. I had gotten second pick with 3 to 4 different teams before going to Jackson, Mississippi, and doing local news. So glad that I did, because I wouldn't have gotten the experience with those teams. Looking back now, that I did doing local news every day, but I ended up getting picked by the Islanders to go up there, which was a great experience. Loved working for the team. I did a lot of the in-arena hosting on the scoreboard, and then I also would do stuff for their website, like player interviews and things like that. But after, it only took me a few months through that job to realize that I really wanted to get back in TV. Digital and the in-arena hosting was quite different. It was more different than TV than I expected it to be. And I just love, like, as an athlete, I love it. I'm sure you're the same way, the adrenaline rush of having to go live on TV. And can you imagine like not doing our role and having everything be taped? I missed it so much. I really did. I mean, it was nice being alive in the arena, but it's just different when you're on TV. And so I really wanted that Shannon Hogan, she's the host and ringside reporter for the Islanders. I was always talking to her. I really wanted her type of role. And so after a season with the Islanders, I freelanced with Golf Channel, PGA Tour, literally did anything I could get. Actually found a lot of gigs and kept myself busy, but I always wanted that full-time hockey gig. And then it's just so funny that of all the gigs that opened up for hockey teams, it happened to be the Penguins. My agent called me. He's like, yeah, we've got this TV hockey gig open. And I'm like, oh, that's great. That's what I want. And then he said, it's with the Penguins. And I said, no way. That's the one team that I would choose, because I grew up a Penguins fan. My dad played for them. So it's just so funny how things work out. And that's how I ended up in Pittsburgh.
That's serendipitous right there. That's incredible. I love hearing that. And, I want to ask you about the audition process. I'll tell you, man, like I've had a few of them, and, they are nerve wracking, they're nerve wracking, because you go in and it's just like, you want to be perfect, but at the end of the day, it's like, no, don't be perfect, be you. Right. And that's the biggest thing, because if you're not you, eventually it's going to come out and it's not going to be right. So, what was your mindset going into the audition?
I feel like any audition or interview I did before that, I never felt like I did as great. I would leave it after thinking, why didn't I just be me more? And it's funny you say that, because at the end of the day, like, being you is how you're going to get a job that suits you. And so that's what I did with this audition. Raycroft, he was my analyst, my play
I'm
and
so
analyst.
sorry about that. Oh, that's rough for you,
man. A great job. I mean, he doesn't even cover the
No, he's awesome. He's the best. He's the best. I'm just kidding.
He did great. He was my player. He was my fill-in player. He was my Chris Letang, my Sidney Crosby. They'd air and highlight, and then I would interview him as if he was the player. Did great. I honestly was surprised he didn't laugh while he was doing it. Straight face, did a great job. But no, it was that was the one audition where I was like, wow, I don't want to say it was easy, but I just felt so comfortable. And it wasn't just because the Penguins were a team I grew up watching, but I just think I've covered so many sports other than hockey. And so finally being able to cover hockey and be back in my element, I just think my excitement showed. So I had a great time at the audition. It was weird because I was always so nervous for other auditions, but at NESN, I guess it just felt very comfortable and homey for me. So glad it ended up working out. I'm just thinking, man, I really hope I get this job. I really like it here.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it's great. And, obviously, been watching, some Sportsnet Pittsburgh coverage and things like that. And it's really cool to see everybody doing well. And, you talked about the excitement of covering the team that you grew up watching. I feel that same excitement, and I still do, because, I obviously grew up, just south of Boston, still living here. I grew up watching these teams, and my audition process at NESN, and I told this story on an earlier pod, but I was 2 hours late. I got caught in the worst traffic ever.
Okay. I was
worst
going to say, what's
traffic
the
ever.
reason? 2 hours? Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't, well, like 90 minutes, not quite 2 hours, but like I'm
Yeah.
embellishing the story. Like, 5 years from now, I'd be like a day late. I got on the wrong day, but no, I showed up late and, I was like, oh man, I'm toast. I'm not getting this job, but ended up working out and, having the opportunity to work with some of the players at the time that I grew up watching uh was
Yeah.
really cool, and obviously you're not starstruck, but you're just sort of like, man, like, is this for real? Like, am I actually doing
Right.
this real life? And
Like, I
it's
was
really
enough
awesome.
to sit next to them and talking hockey with them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great. And so season one, with the Penguins, went well. What stood out to you about the first season working with the Penguins?
I think I had missed for a while just being a part of a team. And I'm sure you get this too when you travel with the team, being an athlete and being a part of a team your whole life. I loved being like when you're traveling with the team pretty much every day, at every practice, at every game, and on the plane with them, you really feel like you're a part of the team. It's a family. And I'm not sure how it is at the Bruins. It seems to be the same with you and Sophia, but it really does feel like a family at the Penguins. And so I really liked that. When I show up for work every day, it wasn't really like I was showing up for work. It was kind of like I was showing up to say hi to my family that I see every day. And so that's really special. Everybody at PPG Paints Arena is so nice. Everybody knows you by name. I know them by name. Everyone's in the same spot. The workers there have worked there for 40 plus years, some of them. It truly is a family. And so I would say that's what I love the most about it. And like you feel like you're a part of the team. We missed by 1 point for playoffs, and like I
Yeah.
almost cried the night that we missed. Like, you're really a part of the team and you want the guys to do well, to become like your brothers. And so that's been a really cool aspect of it for me.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a very similar situation with the Bruins. When I started at NESN, I hosted a news program for many years and did Red Sox coverage as well. We talked about that. And then
Yeah.
last couple of years, I've been traveling with the Bruins, working more closely with the team, especially this past season when I was full-time rinkside and would jump up
Yeah.
to do pre and post when Sophia was doing rinkside. And it was really entrenched and really got an opportunity to know a lot of the folks within the organization, and not just the players and the front office and coaching staff, but also, like you mentioned, people work in the building at TD Garden, people who work, in media relations and multimedia and all of these different departments. And you really do form a camaraderie with them and a bond, and you're all in this together. There's a team aspect, and that is obviously, you can say the exact same thing for my NESN colleagues who work on the Bruins coverage as well. You're traveling together, you're staying at the same hotels together, you're going out to eat together, and it's so important to create that chemistry and that relationship with everybody that we work alongside. And so I've really learned that aspect of that on the road, because it's
Mhm.
not something I did a ton. I did a little travel with the Red Sox, and it was the same type of thing. It was, but now that I'm doing it on a more consistent basis, I've found that you really, you're in it together. That's the best way I can describe it.
And it's a trust thing, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people might not know this, but for example, if you're traveling on the team and you see an injury or something happens, I mean, they trust you to announce
Yep.
that when they feel it's appropriate. And so once they see you handle situations like that and show that you're loyal to the team first, that really builds that trust. And I think that's why the relationships become so strong.
So the hockey season ends, and like
Sadly.
myself, we transition. There's no off season. We go right
Yeah.
into baseball, and I've been doing the fill in for our main host Tom Karen, who's awesome. He does a number of different things here at NESN. Has been at NESN for over 30 years, I think now, or just about 30 years. And you sort of have to switch gears. In fact, one of the it was fun. This was an adrenaline rush, but like we ended up, the Bruins ended up playing the Maple Leafs in the first round. The series went 7 games. We end up traveling back to Toronto for game 6. Bruins lose that game. We fly back on a Friday, and I get off the charter and go right to NESN and host Red Sox pre and post game for the Yeah, so
Wow.
I was hitting the ground running.
For you.
Yeah, so
swapping
that was
between.
an adrenaline rush. Yeah, man. And then the next day, hosted pre and post game for Red Sox, and then went to the Garden for Game 7. And I mean, that was wild. It was a lot of fun. I loved doing that. But then once the Bruins season ended, you sort of like kind of exhale and transition to baseball. What was the transition for you? And it's a little different too, right? Because you hadn't covered the Pirates before.
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually had a whole week before I'd cover my first game, unlike you. So that was nice where I went to a coffee shop for about 8 hours every single day that whole week and just I have an 80-page Pirates document because you know how it is when, I mean, back when you were first covering the team for the first time, there's so much you just don't know. And so
Sure.
I leaned on that pretty heavily. But after a couple of weeks of covering the team, you just pick up on things and it's been a lot more comfortable and natural now knowing the team. The first couple of weeks were a little hard because I was doing a couple games of golf. So I was kind of flopping between the PGA Tour and the golf world, and then also coming back and
Wow.
doing Pirates. So now that I've just been Pirates for this last, 2 months now, before hockey starts up again, it's been great. But Paul Skeens, that doesn't hurt to be able to cover him. That's been super exciting to say the least. Just tossed a scoreless inning last night at the All-Star game. So definitely a lot of hype around him. And I got to say, with all the hype around him, he is the most humble guy. I mean, when we talk to him in the locker room for post game after he pitches, he's the only guy. And this is hockey guys are great. And this is for hockey and baseball, any team I've covered. He comes up to our whole group of media and just, I really want to thank you guys for your time. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. And I mean, that doesn't happen, like usually they'll thank you after the interview. He'll walk all the way over just to thank us for the time. And so that just speaks to the type of guy that Paul Skeens is.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Paul Skeens. First off, you haven't met Olivia Dunn yet, right? Livy Dunn, haven't come across her yet.
Not here yet. Hannah Mears, who's our full-time reporter, because I do a little hosting and reporting, she
Yeah.
has met her and interviewed her, and I believe it was his debut night. But no, I have not met her yet, so look forward to that.
Yeah, it's been crazy. It's been great for the game of baseball for sure. I mean, Paul Skeens and watching what he's been able to do. I mean, it is like it's unheard of that a guy comes in and just dominates and then starts the All-Star game after 11 major league starts. It's wild. But in terms of like how you guys have covered him, I mean, is it when he's on the mound? Obviously, that's the big story. But do you sort of like try to incorporate Paul Skeens coverage into everything you do, or if he's not pitching, you sort of leave it alone just so it's not overkill? How do you handle that from a content perspective?
Yeah, well, lately with the All Star announcement, we've done a lot of Skeens stuff. I mean, the first half hour of our pregame show that day was all Skeens, and he, of course, wasn't pitching a few days ago. But I would say, no, we usually leave it alone the days that he's not pitching. We cover him a lot, probably, I would say, the 3 days around when he's going to be our starting pitcher. Other than that, we give the other guys the attention, as they deserve as well. But no, I mean, the broadcasts are always certainly very jam packed when we're talking Skeens because he just keeps breaking every franchise record, every milestone. I mean, it's crazy that after he was drafted first overall, 10 months later, he makes his debut, All-Star game. Now he's the starting pitcher. I mean, this was all, I think we said, in 368 days since he was drafted first overall. So certainly been more than enough to talk about.
Do you feel the buzz around the ballpark, Pittsburgh? Is it
Yeah.
palpable? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm pretty sure someone just said that every game has pretty much been sold out when the Pirates fans find out that he's the starting pitcher. If you go walk throughout the city and they have all of the shirts and things they're selling, pretty much the only jersey you can find right now says Skeens or T-shirts on the back of it. I mean, the buzz is huge, and I think my parents actually they're visiting to come to their first game at PNC Park next week, and I was doing the math and it will be 6 days after he just pitched yesterday in the All-Star game. So I was telling my dad, hey, you guys might get really lucky with these tickets. You might get to see Paul Skeens pitch. And so he was pretty excited about that too. But yeah, it's
Awesome.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so young and he handles himself like he's a veteran. He's been out here forever.
Yeah, he's got a great demeanor about him, and he throws a hundo, so that's pretty impressive as well.
Yeah.
But you mentioned PNC Park, man. Like I haven't gotten there yet. I was able to see when I was in Pittsburgh with the Bruins, I could see PNC Park from my hotel window. I hear nothing but great things about it. Just an absolute beautiful park. You agree?
so beautiful. Yeah, I guess it's been named top 5 almost every year in terms of
Yeah.
beauty. I forget the last year it was named first. I actually think it might have been last season, but yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, you, especially if you sit actually higher up in the stands, which are usually the cheaper tickets, you get to see the whole river behind the stadium. And a lot of fans have told me they just come there because they love the scenery. And it's beautiful to be outside there. And even if you don't like baseball, it's just a beautiful place to be. So yeah, definitely love being there. It doesn't hurt to have a nice view when you're working.
So, what are the other aspects of the job, aside from getting to know the players, the teams, working with the analysts, travel, fans,
Yeah.
right? And social media and interacting with fans on social media and in person, right? Because when you are home naturally in the rink, you see all these fans. They're like, "Hey, what's going on? What's happening?" And and even on the road, it's even more sort of personal because you obviously when you're on the road, you don't have as many. In your case, Penguins fans. I don't have as many Bruins fans, even though that they're both teams have pretty good showings on the road. But how has your experience with the Pittsburgh fan base been so far?
Oh, they're so supportive. It's been the best. I think they appreciate that I grew up a Penguins fan as well, since I'm not actually from Pittsburgh. But no, it's been great. And when we're at the desk, as I'm sure for you, when you're getting ready to host a show, they all come up and they say hello, and you get people coming up on a regular basis, so you get to know these fans and you build a relationship with them, and just kind of adds to the family aspect that I was talking about earlier in the show. So no, it's great, and it's so fun to see how into these games some of the fans get, because I'm into the games, but then you meet some of these super fans and they're so into it. And maybe on a day you're a little bit tired from working so much, they bring your energy up. And so it reminds you that what you're doing is important to them, and it's great to feel like you're making an impact for them. And they're always complimenting us on, you're doing a great job on the broadcasts. I'm sure for you too. So no, it's been really cool to see, and it doesn't hurt to have Sidney Crosby on your team. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
the vibe that he gives the fans as well. So, which we'll have to talk about that another time. Covering Sidney Crosby, that's a whole other experience. He's got his routine, and it's been fun to watch him.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you on the pod later on. Maybe we'll have Jemai and Sophia when they're not like lounging about in the sunshine, probably. No, but they're. Have you met? By the way, have you met Soph or Jemai yet? Have you gotten a chance to meet them?
No, I've been wanting to meet her, and when we actually came up for a game, it was a national game, and so we covered all the national broadcasts. I know you guys didn't, but the Penguins did,
Right.
and I think she was sick at the time, so she wasn't at the game. So I just missed her, but look forward to meeting her next time we come to Boston, because she's mostly hosting, right? So I'd have to go up there.
Yeah. She's got her spot on the fifth floor. But Jemai, you probably wouldn't have a chance to meet because do you travel with Pittsburgh? Did you say the Pirates rather? Did you travel with Pirates or a little bit?
Yeah, so Pirates, I actually only had one road trip. I mostly host in
Okay.
studio, but I'm the main inside reporter for the Penguins, so I travel with them everywhere.
Yeah,
Yep.
that I knew. I meant with the Pirates. I didn't think you did as much
Yeah,
travel,
not
mostly
so much.
studio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But in terms of the fan bases, like I look at Pittsburgh and Boston as pretty similar. In terms of their passion for their teams,
Yeah,
which
for sure.
which is yeah, right. Like I mean, you must have experienced that sort of passion, and that with that
Yeah.
passion can come like some negativity, right? When the team's not playing well, and sometimes it's directed at the network or it's directed at you personally. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of got to remind yourself that you're going to have fans like that and that it's not you. But we certainly dealt with that on Twitter when we went through our fair share of losing streaks this season.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the tweets started to be a lot more positive when we won however many 12 of the last 14 games or whatever it was. We went on a huge run. So that was nice. And that's hard, right, when the team's not doing well. Because at one point in the season, we actually thought we got back from a trip in Canada, Vancouver, and we lost pretty much every game out there on the road trip. I think it was it was all 4 that we lost. And so that's even interviewing some of the guys, the players who I'm friends with. They weren't even that great with the interviews because they all thought that they had missed their shot in the playoffs, which of course they end up making a run. But, just the whole
Right.
atmosphere when you're losing is never the best. And the fans certainly weigh their opinion in during that. So we do our best to kind of ignore it. I tweet back and respond anything positive I can.
Yeah. No, I mean, you try to keep it positive for sure. The one thing that I try to do And I'm not out to like mudsling. I'm not gonna, say, oh, this guy sucks too. Yeah, I agree with you, man. Yeah, he's terrible. Oh, they don't know what they're doing over there. But I don't do
Yeah,
that. But at the same time, I don't BS. I don't BS the fans, because they can see right through that. Just like in Pittsburgh, right? Like
right.
they're passionate, they follow, they know what they're talking about, they're knowledgeable, just like the Boston fan base, and when the team's not playing well, it's like, yeah, I acknowledge that, but you do have to sort of toe the
Oh,
line.
sure.
Like I don't want to upset, anybody individually. I keep it more with the collective, right, as a group, because I think, especially in hockey, right? Like it's all about team, and it's something that, you don't want to make it too much about one individual. You make it about the
Right.
group. So I mean, I think that honesty is important to the fan bases in both Boston, and I would imagine Pittsburgh too.
Definitely. I mean, you've got to be aware and sensitive with the team side of you being so close with the team, but also for sure. I mean, if a fan comes up and talks to me about how the team's not doing well, I'm not going to say, oh no, we're doing great. We're going to win the next three. Like, yeah,
Right, right.
good right now. We do need to figure out the power play. I'm not going to talk bad about a coach or a player, of course, because I respect them and they're my friends. But I mean, yeah, we do need to figure it out. So certainly have to be transparent. When the team's not doing well, it's harder to come up with storylines, as you know, for
Yeah.
reports. And for example, we were on a really long losing streak going into the Christmas break, and I asked the guys if they could name all 9 of Santa's reindeer and name the game. And sometimes those are your reports when the team's not doing well, and I'll just be like, hey, Jake, do you want to talk about the power play, or would you rather answer this question? So sometimes we try to make it not doing well, and we do our best to get through those bad stretches.
Yeah. How much you talk to your dad about the team? Is he somebody that's on the phone with you like after every game, or is it how does that work?
Quite a bit, actually. My dad's
Yeah,
not a
I would
big
imagine.
texter. This job, it's so funny. I'll like be covering a game, and he's like, "Oh man, they shouldn't have done that on that power play." I'm like, "You never text me very often," but now suddenly you have so much to say. It's quite hilarious, actually. But no, we'll talk like the next day. He'll call me, and I can tell he's excited to talk hockey. He's kind of living through my job, which is so fun for him. So he'll talk as if he was a scout watching the game, and it helps me out because then I have some good ideas to report on the next day. So it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty cool. I'm thinking right now. It's like it's mid-July, All-Star break in baseball. I mean, before you know it, we're going to be getting back into the rink. I'm looking forward to getting back in. Bruins have some new faces. The offseason's not over yet, but this looks like this is pretty much going to be their team. I know the Penguins just missed the playoffs last year. They added Matt Grzelcyk, our guy, from the Bruins, was here for his
Yeah.
entire career, a local guy, and so it is kind of funny though going to Pittsburgh because you got two former BU, guys, Mike Sullivan and David Quinn there, and also SNP Pittsburgh, who's NESN, right? So he's kind of like it's almost like a home away from home. But I want to ask you before we go, what are you most looking forward to about covering the Penguins in year 2 at SNP?
I want to win. That's what I want the team to go far. So I'm so competitive. I'm too competitive for my own good. But no, I got so pumped up when we went to the playoffs. So I'm just looking forward to seeing this team do really well and win. Everyone makes fun of me. They're like, Hailey, you're way too optimistic. I was the only one who was thinking we might make the playoffs towards the end. It's just how I am. But no, I'm just looking forward to seeing this team win some games and go on a run. I mean, I haven't covered the playoffs in hockey before. So that's a really cool thing for me. So I hope that we make the playoffs and that I get to cover a team that does well this season.
Yeah, here.
Well, you?
I feel the same way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do.
yeah,
I'm looking
team.
forward to. I'm looking forward to the same thing. Bruins have been in the postseason. They made the second round. I'm looking forward to maybe not playing the Panthers. Early on in the postseason after the first couple of
Well,
years. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm really excited to see the new additions on the ice, like most Bruins fans are. Elias Lindholm, getting a top 6 center is so huge, and that moves Pavel Zacha over to the wing, and yeah, you have the big guy Nikita Zadorov that they signed as well on the back end. It's going to provide some protection, some physicality, and things like that. So really looking forward to see those guys, and then Jeremy Swayman. Obviously still doesn't have a contract as of yet. It looks like he's going to get one, hopefully soon. and seeing
Yeah.
how he does as the man. That was a big deal with Linus Ullmark being traded to Ottawa. So looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing all those storylines. But it's going to be here before we know it. We still have some baseball to do, Hailey. So I know you're going to be getting back into it after the All-Star break, just like I am. I got the game one of the Dodgers series, which I'm looking forward to. So a late night on the West Coast. But I want to say I really had a good time, hosting this podcast and having you on. And I know that Jemai and Sophia weren't here this time around, but hopefully we can go 4 wide. That would be fun. We've got to do that, right?
Oh, that would be. Yeah. Hey,
Awesome.
I can meet them that way. Right? I still haven't met them, which is unbelievable. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Finally getting to know you some more too.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. So looking forward, definitely circling the dates in Pittsburgh and when Pittsburgh comes to Boston on the calendar so we can get together again. Hailey Hunter from SNP joining us here on Extra Time. And well, Jemai and Sophia will be back at some point. I believe Jemai's coming back next week, so I'll have him on. But Hailey, hope to have you on soon. And thanks for joining us on Extra Time.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who's listening as well.